Gatekeep me.
Can anyone see my horrible cold sore? It's actually gone down a little bit. Thank
I
you.
actually cannot see it. No.
Can't see
Well, the
it.
quality of the camera is not the best, so that's really good.
Yeah, Pat, where are you?
I'm in my office at the school I go to.
Wow. If you couldn't tell, I did start recording.
I assumed, because why else would you ask me that question?
Because
In that tone.
I want our viewers to know where you are. Well, at least the people on YouTube to know where you are.
Did you hear that? I think it's the sound of our guest's voice.
Who?
Who?
I hear a little bug.
A little bug. Hello, I'm just gonna start. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the What Do the Gays Think podcast. Today with me, I have Pat, the Nobel Peace Prize winner. How you doing, Pat?
I don't think I'd win a peace prize. I'd hope I'd win like a science Nobel Prize, but I won't.
Shut up.
So
Oh, so you would not take peace? You don't
Well,
want world peace, is that what you're saying?
there's no peace in the Middle East recently, so
Ooh, that's not what we're talking about in this episode.
yeah. Oops, sorry to bring you
Oopsie
down, y'all.
whoopsie, didn't mean to go off topic there. Today with we also have the return of the great and lovely Jackie, who also happens to be my personal mail woman. Hello, Jackie, how are you?
No
Well-
peace prize for you, Jackie.
No peace prize for me, but I will get best mail deliverer of the year, which is very,
Now,
very
Is
competitive.
that MAIL or MALE?
See, you know what's funny? When he first said that, in my head I was like, I did the MALE. I was like, well, that's an interesting take on non-binary, like a cute little pet name, pet
Mail woman.
thing that you've given to me.
Like, yeah.
And then
Yeah.
I was like, oh, wait, he means like envelopes.
Yeah, you know,
Yeah.
delivering mail to me. hmm
Or it's
No,
a
I like
double
mail woman.
entendre where you deliver men to him, like male people,
Oh
and
my goodness.
escorts.
I love
You're like a
that.
pimp to an escort service.
I
Yeah.
love
Deliver
that.
men to me. Hello.
I'm very
Anyway,
In my
crazy.
office.
Oh my God, we're very glad to have Jackie back on the podcast. When was the last time, Jackie, we had you? I don't remember.
You know, I don't remember either, but I know it was a few months ago. Oh, you know, it was where I think we did a video game and maybe like Avatar or like the Pride episode.
Oh yeah, we did the gay thing, our favorite gay
Yeah.
things.
The gay
Yeah,
thing,
yeah.
yes.
The gay thing.
The gay thing where we had a whole month full of Pride episodes. We've been slacking a little bit in terms of new episodes this month, but it is
Missed
summer.
1 week.
We did miss 1 week. I think Cody
You
is
took a
downstairs
vacation.
messing with shit.
Oh my god.
We did take a vacation. We did.
We did, and some of us went really hard on the vacation.
Listen, we don't have to
Yeah.
talk about that.
And
Some of us went very hard on vacation.
Some of us died on a Saturday, and some of us died on a Sunday.
Listen,
Mhm.
listen.
Yeah.
Only Scrubs did, though. That's all I'm gonna say.
Imagine being a scrub and like being not sober in the next day afterwards too.
Imagine being in the car, looking over and being like, I'm not sober yet. And it's the day after. Imagine that.
I can't.
I
It's
can't.
never happened to me before.
All right, let's go to the topic of the episode.
What is it?
So today we're going to be talking about this new climate report from the United Nations that just came out. I'm assuming you guys have both heard of this, that it has just recently come out. Here goes Cody trying to go under my desk.
Hey, which country is the United Nations?
I think
Jackie,
that's the
go away.
area. No. That's the area that the Earth Kingdom gave up to Aang to make the big
Oh,
city.
okay.
Yeah,
Oh,
Kuvira didn't like it.
Okay, yeah, because she's, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
No.
Okay, fine.
But yeah, we're gonna. So I wanted to do an episode because I'm assuming not everyone is going to read this report. Because it's.
I get too depressed.
Yeah, some people get too depressed, like Jackie. Some other people may just be lazy
She
and
didn't
not
even
want to
read
read
the
it.
report and she was depressed.
Legitimately, 100, this is not a bit, 100% accurate.
So I figured that I would read it and that I would, dispel all of the knowledge that I've learned from reading the report to our podcast listeners and you two.
Please dispel.
Just gonna give like the excuse me. What do you want me to dispel?
Dispel any notion that you are straight.
Honey, we've been there. We done that.
We've been new.
We've been new. This is the What Did the Gays Think podcast. I mean, so this report, it's the IPCC sixth assessment report. IPCC stands for the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. I think I actually used their website for our previous climate change episode, where we kind of went through and broke down all the different details on climate change. So they're the ones that did this report. And the full report is 4,000 pages long.
Filled with hope, I bet.
Oh, yeah, filled with so much hope.
No.
So there's a full report that's like 4,000 pages. There's no way I was going to read that. There's another report called the Summary for Policymakers, which I'm assuming is just directed towards, the leaders of every country. And it's like, hey, here's a summary for you. Here's the gist of it. It's only 42 pages, which was still a long read, but still.
Oh, that's a lot longer than what I thought, because I thought it would just be one page that says Earth equals fire.
Earth
Fire,
equals
yeah.
dead.
Yeah. Simple, concise.
I can't believe...
Even Trump could read it.
Hello?
Well, I don't know.
I mean, I didn't say understand, but he could read it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Do you remember when we were gaslit into believing that climate change wasn't real?
When did you ever believe it wasn't real?
I never believed it, but Trump said it wasn't real, so...
So does every white man that's a Republican.
Ooh. Anywho... Right, so I'm going to go through this report. I'm just going to give you guys, like, the bits and pieces that I thought were nice and, nice and fun. I don't want to be too depressing, because it is kind of depressing.
Oh, no, hit me. I want to go. I just want to die.
Okay, here's the intro bit. I'm going to read the intro bit as is, so you guys can understand, like, what we're going to be talking about. So literally at the top of this report, it says, this SPM is the Summary for Policymakers, provides a high-level summary of the understanding of the current state of the climate, including how it is changing and the role of human influence, the state of knowledge about possible climate futures, climate information relevant to regions and sectors, and limiting human-induced climate change. So it's just like a really general overview of the different findings that they had. And the document's broken down into like these 4 sections. The 4 sections being what the current state of climate, possible climate futures. The 3rd section is information for risk assessment and regional adaptation, and limiting future climate change. So lots of fun topics we got here. My favorite part, honestly, is the possible climate futures, because they kind of project.
They're all bad.
They're all bad. No, they project out like what is possible based on these certain things that we can do. So how do you guys feel so far? I know I didn't say anything yet.
I feel bad.
Just a little sidebar. I'm pretty sure when I threw up this past weekend, I think some.
What?
When I
keep going.
last weekend,
Yeah.
It just passed for completely unrelated reason. Don't know why it happened. I think some stomach acid burned the back of my tongue or something, and there's like a red inflammatory kind of thing. But besides that, I'm fine. Thank you for asking.
Wow.
Wow. That was wow. That was incredible. Thank you. All right, so I'm gonna go through each of the 4 sections here, and kind of just give the highlights of what I found. Yes. So the first section is the current state of the climate, and basically what this says is just like, hey, listen, climate change is obviously real, and like it's kind of funny the way that they break it down in the document. They try to make it like very simple, and they just say, hey, climate change is real and it's human caused.
Well, is it?
Oh yeah.
I don't know. I've looked at the data, and the Earth actually used to be a lot hotter or a lot colder than it is now. Like a million years ago when it was first formed out of gaseous space rock. So like
I've heard that.
back then were only dinosaurs and Jesus, so I think that it's not human caused.
Hey, you know all the data that shows how the storms and other unnatural weather patterns have been forming both more frequently and with greater intensity?
Yes.
That's just bullshit. That's the left.
Oh yeah.
That's the left, like, pandering to your fears,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my god, hello. You both sound like hardcore far right fascists. Anyway.
Well.
Anyway, the top of it basically says like it's unequivocal that human influence has caused climate change, aka warming the atmosphere, the ocean, the land, all of it is warming. There's rapid changes in the atmosphere, ocean, cryosphere, biosphere, etc. All that shit is happening.
What's a cryosphere?
To be fair, I didn't look up what a cryosphere is, but if you want me to look it up right now, I can.
No.
I'm gonna look it up just so we know for later.
We're on the clock, honey.
We're on the
keep
clock.
going. Okay.
Are you going to give us the definition, Jackie?
Yeah, so the cryosphere is an all-encompassing term for those portions of Earth's surface where water is in solid form, including sea ice, lake ice, river ice, snow cover, glaciers, etc.
So like nowhere.
Oh.
Well, if we keep this up, hopefully it will all just be liquid, no ice. We don't want any ice. No.
Yeah, so the next section of this part here says, there's obvious observed increases in the carbon dioxide, methane, and nitrous oxide, aka our greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. And this is definitely due to human activity. Like they try to outline it very clearly, like, hey, all of this is human influenced. Like there's no doubt about it. And it's lovely. Can you guys guess, in Celsius, can you guys guess what the estimated total human-caused temperature increase was since 1900?
In Celsius?
In Celsius, yeah.
5.
Yeah, I'm gonna guess something like 4.5.
Y'all are wild. No.
What?
Is it 3?
So the human-caused global temperature increase since 1900 has been 1.07 degrees Celsius.
Okay.
Who cares? One little degree Celsius.
Oh my god, this is the problem.
Oh my god. What is it gonna do?
Because you guys know, our point of no return is like 1.5 degrees Celsius since 1900, right?
I don't use Celsius as an American. I refuse to think that this is even real. This is a Fahrenheit country. This is an inches, yards, feet kind of country.
So Celsius is just not real.
It's not real.
Here, I'll give you the Fahrenheit. I'm doing it right now. 1.07 degrees Celsius is apparently 33 degrees Fahrenheit, which I don't believe.
Isn't the conversion like plus 35 divided by 2 or divided by some constant?
Well, how would you know? Celsius isn't real in your book.
Well, as
Celsius
a scientist, I read papers and I see them in Celsius and I have to convert to Fahrenheit.
Anywho, I actually know why. Anyway, the increase is 1.07 degrees Celsius, not like the actual number.
33.926 degrees Fahrenheit for all you non-Celsiusers.
No, but that's saying that literally like 1 degree Celsius is 33 degrees Fahrenheit. On like the scale.
It's not saying the increment.
Yeah, it's not saying that the increment increase is 33 degrees Fahrenheit. Anywho.
Yeah, you have to take what the baseline Celsius is, subtract it from the total Celsius that we can't reach, and then figure out each individual of those Fahrenheit and then subtract those.
Yeah. Oh, I see.
Then you get the increment.
Gotcha.
Anywho.
It's some bullshit.
Yeah.
Anyway, the report goes on to say, like, besides the increase in temperature, we've also seen increased average precipitation, so like rain, across like all land since 1950, and all of it is human caused. Human caused retreat of all the glaciers has been happening since the 1990s. And our upper ocean has been warming since the 1970s. And it's also been getting more acidic, all due to human activity.
So it's getting smaller.
Yes. No.
It's low numbers. Get it? Because we had a joke before we started recording. There was a joke about dicks and whether it was acidic or basic.
I don't remember.
Okay, so here's the joke. Hey, is your dick acidic or basic? And I think the ploy is if someone hears basic and they're not a scientist, they're like, I don't want to be basic, so they say acidic. But anything below 7 is considered acidic, with really like 6.5 to 6.8 being neutral. So really anything below that is acidic. So then they have a smaller dick. But if you're like, my dick's super basic, it's like 12 inches. Sorry for that aside.
I'm really glad that you took the time to explain that.
My response was it's a perfect neutral, which is like 7 about.
Okay. I'm uploading a picture to our Discord right now. It's a lovely chart that you guys can look at that was included in the report. I love data visualizations.
Depression.
Depression. I love data visualizations. It's the best way for me to understand what's happening. I'm going to put this up on the screen for anyone on YouTube. If you're on the podcast, then I'm sorry. Maybe I'll tweet out these images and you can go take a look.
No. If they're listening to the podcast, they can just go find the article themselves and read.
No, I'm going to tweet these out.
Okay, let's see if he remembers, everyone. Remember, let's see if he...
hope. If I do remember, you can find them at WDTGT Podcast.
Nice.
WDTGT Podcast. Anywho... so you could definitely take a look at this graph. The first graph is since about like 0 AD up to the 2000s, you could see what the global average temperature was. Or it's like increment compared to like the 1850s-ish. And then you could see, obviously, right at the end there's a massive spike, unprecedented in more than 2,000 years. And then in that second chart, it kind of zooms into the 1850s to 2020 range. And you could see, obviously, there's a pretty large jump right at the end there. And they actually simulate what it would be if there wasn't human causes. That's that blue line. And you could see there would be relatively no change if there was no human activity. So I thought that was pretty fun.
Yeah,
Humans
fun.
really do cause all the bad things to happen.
Oh, yeah. Humans are the worst. And they also give this other lovely chart that kind of breaks down what the causes are of the... Here, I'm going to upload that to the Discord too. It kind of breaks down like what the causes are of the temperature increase. So it breaks it down into, most of it is greenhouse gases. But then there's like certain other human drivers that actually cool the planet a little bit, mostly due to this sulfur dioxide shit going on that kind of balances it out very little bit. A little bit. Very blah, blah, blah.
Hello? Are you okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
But I thought this chart was pretty cool. Again, I'll put it up on the YouTube so you guys can see. But it breaks down like what are the drivers of that, 1 degree Celsius increase that we've seen since the 1850s. How do we all feel about this so far?
Anxious and depressed.
Oh.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of this... Well, I'd assume a lot of this we already knew or suspected.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
But basically, this kind of just confirms that part of it. My favorite part is when we get to the climate futures. But let me just finish off this section. They go on to say, like, heat waves have become more frequent and more intense. Cold waves becoming less frequent and less severe. Also, category 3 to 5 hurricanes, the frequency of them has increased over the last 4 decades. And there's also, just a general increased chance of extreme weather events, heat waves, droughts, wildfires, flooding, etc., all due to this, we warming, etc. Which means that if this continues this way, we will start to see more and more extreme weather events. And we already know that, there's enough of those already.
Weren't there already, like, right now 3 weather storms in, like, the South American Florida coast area? I think there's, like, 3 different ones. One of them is, like, a tropical storm, and 2 of them they're watching. Suffice to say, there's shit everywhere. California's on fire. Down
Canada.
To our southeast, it's drowning, raining, windy, and soon here, here I'm sure we'll just, I don't know,
die.
Get hit with a... Oh, well, yeah, that's the end result. Yeah. Yeah.
All right, so I'm going to go to the next section now. The possible climate futures. This is a very interesting stuff because it uses like projections and simulations to simulate these 5 different scenarios.
You were just wet for this. I know. You were just
love
reading this You were reading this, and you got up from your bed or your desk, and you were like, "Where did this puddle come from?" Just saturate your underwear.
Listen, while it is depressing to go through this report, I also love data and like these simulations and these models. So I was having a ball reading this, even though I was, sad and crying about, the Earth dying and everything. But I love data.
The Earth won't die. We'll all die.
I can't wait.
Oh, same. I can't wait either.
I just want humans to just be wiped out at this point.
Including me, including us. I'm not trying to say save a few people. No,
no. That's it. Back to one.
That's a wrap.
Get back to one.
Just one person? Who would be the person?
Take it back to one. Like
when you reset.
Oh yeah.
Scene. Take it back to one.
That was a thing Jackie and I were doing. I think you were too busy somewhere else.
You were preoccupied?
Vomiting my brains out? What?
Your soul.
We weren't even going to drag you, and you dragged yourself.
Listen, you dragged me at the beginning of this episode. I don't want to hear nothing.
I don't remember that.
Right, so the climate futures. We can go back on topic. Away from me vomiting.
Okay.
And you brought
Daddy
it up again.
Chill. Daddy chill.
There are 5 scenarios. All of which are different scenarios based on how much we're able to cut our CO2 emissions, carbon dioxide emissions. So the 5 scenarios are very high emissions, high, intermediate, low, and very low in terms of our, how far we're able to get in terms of CO2 emissions. So the very high scenario, which is the worst possible thing that could happen, is our CO2 emissions double by 2050. The intermediate scenario basically means we do nothing and we have the same level of emissions as today by 2050. And the very low scenario actually is we cut CO2 emissions to net zero by 2050. And there's kind of the in-betweens there. Then they give this lovely chart and it kind of describes the estimated increase in global temperature based on each of those scenarios. So in this, I just want to say, in the best scenario in which we cut CO2 emissions to net zero by 2050, the very low scenario, the increase in global temperature is estimated to be Cody, get out of here. He's jumping on me right now. The increase in global temperature is expected to be 1.6 degrees Celsius by mid-century. But by the end of the century, 2100, it'll be 1.4 degrees Celsius, so it will have gone down slightly.
But isn't 1.6 already over the catastrophic limit? Is that what you said before?
So 1.5 was for a really long time the cutoff, what we wanted to make sure that we didn't get to in order to avoid all catastrophic events. I think they've since increased it to 2.0 to kind of prevent all catastrophic events. 1.5 is still not good, but at this point, even if we cut our emissions to net zero by 2050, we're still going to get to 1.5 regardless. Yeah, so which is kind of scary.
We're going to be dying in mass numbers, but we won't all be dead.
Oh.
Darn it.
Dang
so close, guys.
We're still going to reach a high level of, extreme weather events, more flooding, etc. The sea levels are going to continue to increase. But at least it will start going down towards the end of the century. Hopefully the Earth will begin cooling again if we cut our net emissions. In the intermediate scenario where we do nothing, we'll reach 2 degrees Celsius by mid-century, which is that doomsday event type shit. And by the end of the century, it would be 2.7 degrees Celsius. That's if we did nothing. We kept emitting the same amount of CO2 as we do today.
And do they speculate what the world would look like at that point?
They do give some nice heat maps.
Oh God!
Showing
all red, all red.
Basically, honestly, all red.
Nice.
Showing droughts would increase in this area. Rain would increase in this area. Sea levels would increase by this much. I'll get there. And let me see. In the very high scenario, where if we just doubled our emissions, it would be 2.4 degrees Celsius by mid-century and 4.4 degrees Celsius by the end of the century.
Yeah, ramp it up. Just double it.
You know what? I actually have to go because I need to just turn my car on and just let it run.
Let it go. Just burn all the gas.
Let it go.
Yeah, sorry. I have to go. I don't even know, like set an oil field on fire.
Yeah, yep, BRB.
Yeah.
Even in the low scenario, like the in between very low and intermediate, where they cut CO2 emissions in half by 2050, but not all the way to net zero, the long-term temperature would be 1.8 degrees Celsius by the end of the century. So still not great.
Right.
Basically, this is like hey, we need to do some shit right now to cut our emissions or we're fucked.
Right, yes.
Will we still be alive in 2050?
I mean, if we can cut our net
See.
emissions to zero by 2050, then maybe.
Old.
Would
I
we
don't-
still be alive?
Yeah. Oh, fuck, we will.
I
Okay.
don't know. I don't think I will. That's what, 29 years from now?
We'll only be like 60 in our 60s, right?
I know, but I'm hoping to die by like 45, 50.
Okay.
What?
Respects.
Yeah, because like once my body starts going, like I don't really see, and hopefully by then I'm retired. Like I've done everything. Like,
Well,
what is there to look forward to? Just shitting your pants, sitting in front of the couch, and,
burning
you
in
know.
fire. That's what there is.
I
Why can't you do that
mean,
once and just die.
Die.
cool.
Well, let's hope we don't never get there. I hope
Cool.
to die by 2030.
Oh,
Cool.
what?
Anywho, so obviously they say like even the smallest increments of these like degrees Celsius, like even 0.5 degrees Celsius would intensify our current problems like pretty exponentially. And I also saw this one interesting note with an interesting graphic as well. So we have these things called carbon sinks. It could be on the land, it could be on the ocean, but basically it's things that absorb the carbon dioxide in our atmosphere. So forests, the water absorbs the carbon dioxide, etc. But these carbon sinks effectively become less effective if there's more carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. And I'll show you a lovely chart that I have that kind of demonstrates this. It is going into our chat. So you can kind of see the proportion. These are actually the different scenarios that I said, like the very low is all the way on the left, the very high is all the way on the right. So you could see in the very high scenario, our carbon sinks, while they are taking in more carbon dioxide overall, it's less of the proportion of the total CO2. So they become less effective. That last one there has 38% of the carbon dioxide being absorbed, while the very low scenario is 70% of the carbon dioxide being absorbed.
Yum, yum.
So why?
Why what?
Why do they become less effective, these carbon sinks?
Did I write anything about that? Let me see.
Because it's still increasing. Like, it could still take up more and more CO2 as the atmospheric one increases, but it's just much less than it needs to be. So I'm wondering, I don't think it's saturated, because it's still being able to, or it's reaching saturation, because it's still able to get more and more CO2.
Yeah, the thing about the 42-page report is that it doesn't go into the details, really.
Well, shit. Guess I have to download the giant one.
You may have to go into the
4,000
technical
pages.
report. 4,000 pages. Get in there and see what the heck is going on. But basically, they said that in their simulations, they found that these carbon sinks were a lot less effective the more CO2 was in the atmosphere, even though they will absorb more as there is more CO2 in the atmosphere, which I find was interesting. Last bits of this section. Interesting. Last bits of this section. There are certain changes that have happened that are now irreversible, according to this report. No matter what we do, even if we cut CO2 emissions to net zero by 2050, the ocean is still going to continue warming. It'll still continue to be acidified. And there will also continue to be deoxygenation of our oceans as well. So there will be less oxygen in the ocean. Apparently I can't speak.
I love all of this. Keep it coming.
Our glaciers are going to keep melting for decades or even centuries.
Yeah.
It's just going to keep going. And they even say that the ice melting from the Greenland ice sheet, that will also increase our emissions, apparently.
Yeah, glaciers are huge holders of CO2.
Yeah, so that's not going to be good. That's just going to increase it exponentially. Our global sea level is just going to continue to rise, like no matter what we do. They estimate between 0.28 meters and 0.55 meters by 2100 under the very low scenario. But if you get to the very high scenario, it could increase between 1 meter and 1.8 meters. That's big for sea level increase.
Oh, it's big.
Oh, that's big. Like I'm at 1 meter higher of ocean level. That could take out some beach towns, like quite a few.
You guys better move to Mississippi and get some beachfront property.
Oh, heck yeah.
I'm really curious, like economically, how all that will happen, because insurance prices and all these other things are so expensive already that I'm just curious to see the continued impact that these ecological changes will have on our economics.
Oh yeah, I'm just hoping that it's a Mad Max situation at that point and there is no insurance.
Listen, hear me out. Maybe this is like for like the post. I'm ready. I'm okay with that scenario.
You're okay with apocalyptic Mad Max United States?
Yes. And I said this before when the pandemic was first happening, and I'll say it again. I will take over the local mall and lord over it. Like, it's the perfect place to set up it, like a little, what do you call it? Like a fortress. I'm ready. I'm ready.
Yeah.
One of the scary things that I saw in this section of the report as well is it's basically saying that our Arctic ice will basically fully melt by 2050 in the very high scenario. Even for the high and the intermediate scenarios, we'll like lose all of our Arctic ice entirely. Not by 2050, right. It'll obviously be pushed out. But yeah, even if we did nothing and just kept our CO2 emissions as is, well, all our Arctic ice will be lost. So that's fun.
I love this.
I love it. So I'm leaving this section now. I had a lot of fun with the data here. But I'm going to move on.
Oh, there's more.
Hello?
Oh, there's always more.
Good.
There is a little bit more. There's two more sections. There's the climate information for risk assessment and regional adaptation section. Honestly, this section, I did read through it. There's not much fun in here. But basically, fun, yeah, quote unquote.
Yeah, fun.
This section basically, it like outlines a range of like near-term variabilities in like climate change that could possibly happen. That could quote unquote mask human-caused climate change. It's just like a warning that says, hey, like in the near term, there could be some cooling in certain regions. But don't let that like trick you into thinking that climate change is reversing or anything. Like even if there is like temporary decreases, like human caused climate change is still going to increase over time. So it lays out some examples. It says like, oh, there's certain regions of the country there's certain regions of the world that may experience some cooling. There could also be like other activities on the globe that could cause like temporary cooling. For example, if there was a big volcanic eruption, that could potentially cause cooling of the earth for like 1 to 3 years. But that would not change the trajectory of human caused climate change at all. Like it would still be on the same trajectory of increase, even if that did happen. So it's basically saying like for everyone that would deny climate change, if the earth in any region would start cooling, it basically says, no, like don't be tricked by this. Like it's still happening.
Gotcha.
Right.
And I just find it funny that they have to outline this in this report, or else people would still like, oh, look, the earth's getting cooler. Now we don't have to worry about it. Like, no, we still have to worry about it.
And it's kind of wild to me, too, that even at this point with a literal, was it 4,000 page report, people will look at the smallest thing and be like, yep, okay, we're done here.
We're done.
It's actually cooling. and then go back to their ways. It's really wild.
Oh yeah, I mean, people.
It's
like the COVID thing. It's like, oh, COVID numbers are going down. It's like, oh, it's all over now.
Whip off my mask.
Here we go.
Here I am.
Whip off my mask. Whip off my bra.
Whip off my pants. Woo!
Yeah. That's what they said.
Anyway, yeah, the rest of this section, it kind of goes into like different regional effects. So it outlines, which areas are more likely to experience heavy precipitation and floods. Like they say Africa, Asia, North America, and Europe are all more susceptible to heavier rains. And then there are certain areas like, for example, Western North America, like the California region, and certain parts of Africa that are much more susceptible to droughts. So it gives you like all these regional heat maps, and I don't feel like going into all the specifics. But there's definitely some for policymakers, obviously, of these different countries. They can see how their countries are probably going to be affected by the different aspects of climate change. So I thought that was pretty cool. And the last section of this lovely report, limiting future climate change. So they basically outline some ways in which we could, limit as much climate change as we can. Obviously, they say if we cut CO2 emissions, reaching net zero as fast as possible, obviously by 2050 is the best scenario. Even with that, though, we're still going to get to that, 1.5 degrees Celsius mark, even in the very low scenario. So they do say that there's something called anthropogenic CO2 removal, which basically has the potential to remove some of the CO2 from the atmosphere, which would help us reach, net zero emissions a bit faster. It's some sort of technology that I didn't really try to understand too much. But basically, if we can ramp up this technology, this anthropogenic CO2 removal, that might help us reach the net zero emissions a lot faster. And if we could reach the net negative, so if we start pulling more carbon out of the atmosphere than we're emitting into it, we could even reverse some of the changes that we've seen so far, like ocean acidification, for example. We could even reverse that.
Oh, okay.
What else does it say? Yeah, it keeps saying we would be able to gradually reverse other climate bits by, removing the carbon from the atmosphere as fast as possible. However, there are some things that will not be able to reverse, such as the sea level rising. That's probably not going to be able to be reversed, but we could try to mitigate it as much as possible. And there is another funny note that I saw in this bit, which basically says atmospheric CO2 concentrations continue to rise in 2020 with no detectable difference in the observed growth rate, even in spite of COVID lockdowns. Basically saying that even when everyone was basically not driving in 2020, there was a lot less activity happening in 2020. The increase in CO2 concentrations was still relatively the same as it was the year before.
And do you know why that is?
Because a lot of our emissions are coming from big corporations and stuff.
I know, and they use propaganda to make it seem like climate change and environmentalism is an individual's responsibility, when actually it's not. So everyone's all like,
I shut off my electric, and I don't flush my toilet. I only flush it once a week.
All these videos of people living net zero, which is so cool. They literally recycle everything, compost everything, whatever. Like, that's cool. But not everyone can live like that, because that is a privileged position. Because a lot of that stuff requires some financial flexibility, which some people don't have. But either way, like, cool for you for doing that. But it's the emissions that we're causing do not compare to larger, factories, businesses, et cetera, et cetera. It's great, but it's not the thing. It's not the key issue here.
It's not it.
That ain't it, Chief.
That ain't it.
So we've got a ways to go. That's it for the notes that I've taken, at least.
Was there anything else about any other technologies in there? I was just curious. Like, do they talk about like wind and solar, like continuing our wind and solar energy paths?
The biggest thing that they say is, hey, we need to cut our CO2 emissions. Okay. But nothing in the report said specifically if we replace a lot of our energy grids with wind and solar, obviously that would help cut our CO2 emissions. They don't go into the specifics, at least in the summary report. They might go into it in other reports. But yeah, obviously, moving to green energy as fast as possible, getting all of our energy away from burning coal, etc. As long as we reduce the amount of carbon that we're emitting, whatever way we can get there will be helpful.
Gotcha.
It's terrifying.
Yeah.
It really is, isn't it?
But suffice to say, after going through all of this, I have reached the conclusion that there is a little bit of hope, obviously. If we
what is it? Tell me.
Our little bit of hope is if we act quickly, we implement policies across the globe, not just, yes, the United States is a huge contributor to global climate change, but even a lot of other countries are as well. And I think I went through this in the climate change episode, but obviously there are some other large countries that need to contribute as well. We all need to work globally to reduce our emissions, try to pull as much carbon out of the atmosphere as possible and cut down to net zero by 2050. In that scenario, the best case scenario, obviously, like, things will be okay. So there is like a shining glimmer of hope. But see, and this is the problem that I've had, specifically with the Trump administration. People will say like, oh, what did Trump do wrong? And obviously, there is a lot of shit that he did wrong. But the biggest thing, yeah, shocker, right? The biggest thing I will always say is that for 4 precious years, we twiddled our thumbs and did nothing to cut our carbon emissions at all. And I feel like that has led to this report, which is saying, hey, we're fucked.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
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 So if you ever need any ammo to say like, hey, the Trump administration fucked up, you could just say, hey, we twiddled our thumbs on climate change for 4 years, and now the world is doomed.
Hey man, listen. Look, he did such good things for the economy, man. Look at it that way, man. The economy. We're thriving.
You can't
thriving.
Jobs
everywhere. Job. Everywhere.
Against them, though, you can't, because they don't believe in climate change, so they're not going to care.
Jobs. American jobs.
Well, maybe if they took the time to read this report, I don't know. Maybe they would believe it.
Trump supporters can't read. Stop it.
Ooh.
Stop.
Well, I will continue to hold on to hope for, that sliver of hope. And I really hope that we can get our asses in gear and do something. What terrifies me is I feel personally powerless in this scenario, because I feel like since it is up to the corporations, it's so fucking hard to get any type of actual traction. And that's the part that terrifies me, is the corporations who have all the money, and we're, going closer and closer to a corporatocracy.
Yeah.
Where we just, what do we matter? But
work.
Yeah, but the other technologies do provide me hope. The wind and solar, I really think that's where it's at.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know what to do. I want to research about how to combat, if there's a way to combat yet, the decreased salt levels in the ocean. Was it salinating the ocean? How to get that balance back in the ocean, because that is what can really fuck up biodiversity levels. Is all the sea life has such like niche levels that they need of salt. So
just get some table salt, just pour it right in the ocean.
I'm just gonna run to the store and I'm gonna buy all the table salt and kosher salt they have and just dump it.
All the Morton salt, yeah.
Yeah. This one's for you, fish.
Pour one out for our fish.
Pour one out.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's all I had.
Wow.
How do you feel about all this, Pat?
I don't feel,
depressed.
I already assumed that all of this was, it's so old. Maybe that's one of the reasons, people don't care. Is also because it's boring. Because, people have been hearing about climate change for years now, if not, a couple decades.
Many decades.
And it's people are going to be like, well, it hasn't happened yet. People keep talking about it. Maybe it just will never happen. And it's it's also frustrating because, you keep hearing about it, but as I said before, it's not really up to the individuals as so much as, politicians and those people running businesses who use a lot of fossil fuels, who generate a lot of waste. So, yeah, people can put pressure on politicians and on businesses, but they need to be galvanized to do so. And since it's been so long and a lot of people aren't feeling, at least in the country, the effects of climate change directly, you're going to have to hit a point where climate is really, really bad before people actually give a shit about it. So like we're going to have to set the planet on fire before we put it out.
I kind of to your point, I wonder if the increased volatile weather patterns, like the forest fires, how many people have been displaced due to these weather events, if that will in the long run aid in pressuring politicians to act on companies. I really hope it does.
Yeah, me too. But like, it depends if the people who like, let's say, lost their house in the forest fire even attribute it to climate change, because like those things do happen. So I can imagine like a family, like their house just gets wrecked in like a mudslide, and they're like, well, we live over here in some rectangular middle state that happens every year, so like it's not climate change, it's just our way of life, and then we just rebuild and wait till next year's monsoon.
It's an act of God.
It's an act of God. God
looked at my house and he said, "I hate your curtains," and he just bulldozed my house.
He's like, "I'm gonna make those curtains match the drapes."
Didn't like my aesthetic choices.
Yeah. So here I am now.
Here I am now, moving back into the same plot of land my mama and daddy died on.
God bless.
From a mudslide that happened 5 years before.
I saw a fun TikTok that was like trying to explain why like boomers don't believe that climate change is going to be a real thing.
Why?
And it was like, oh, because, boomers grew up during the Cold War, in which they were being told every day that there was a possible chance that, the world would end because of the nuclear war. Or, if nuclear bombs went off. So they kind of grew up, thinking like, oh, the world's going to end. But then it never did, obviously, because there was never, a nuclear war that happened. So now they just think like, oh, people say the world's going to end, but then it'll just work itself out eventually, right? I was like, that's an interesting theory to believe that, these people are just like, oh, yeah, they're going to come up with some fancy technology or, something to save us, it'll work itself out. I thought it was interesting that I thought it was an interesting theory.
I think it's
Cold
interesting.
War didn't work itself out.
yeah, right?
It was like politicians and governments eventually settled down and were like, okay, let's maybe not be trigger happy in this time anymore. So I don't think it was. I think people just didn't given that it wasn't an outright war where there was violence and photography and videos of people dying in trenches. I think that's what people got complacent with.
Oh yeah, the USSR also collapsed, and that also helped in the Cold War.
So
but
people really need to see huge weather changes before they're gonna even want to talk about it, and then it'll be too late, and then we're all dead. So.
I will be running them all. And I will have my factions, and you are all welcome to join me. It will be just an equal gender, equal opportunity place.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so in that dystopian society, how long do I wait post your evil turn as a dictator? How long do I wait before I kill you? Because the leader always starts out with good intentions in a post-apocalyptic world, but then they gotta make one hard decision, which leads to another one, and soon you're cannibals, and I have to stop you.
So what I think will happen is I will be, when I start to turn bad, hopefully I just get taken out in a battle, maybe.
Yeah.
But the other scenario is I go off and I start a new little faction place, and you can run the good one, and then maybe it'll just keep repeating itself until I'm dead.
Cool.
Wow.
Yeah.
I love that journey for you.
Thank you. I'm so excited for me. I just yeah.
When Pat shows up to kill Jackie. Well, if it isn't the consequences of my own actions.
There are just bodies behind her that she's just eating.
I'm just what? Just face
Cannibalism.
covered in blood, I've been at a barbecue. What? I was hungry.
Barbecue sauce on my titties. I mean,
I'm a growing leader, okay?
Oh my Lanta. All right, we're at a good point here, I think, in terms of time. So I'm gonna call it here. Thanks everyone for listening to this lovely episode of the What Did the Gays Think podcast. Obviously, if you don't follow us on Twitter, go ahead and follow us. You'll be able to see all those lovely charts that I'm talking about once I post them, obviously. So go ahead and follow us on Twitter at WDTGT Podcast. Don't worry, I will post them. I swear to it. And if I don't post them, then tweet at us and be like, Matt, you did not post the pictures, post them. And I'll be like, oh, yeah. Yep. So follow us on Twitter, WDTGT Podcast. Also, follow our Twitch. Sometimes we stream with our lovely Jackie here. Our Twitch is What Do the Gamers Think? GAYMERS. Jackie, what is your Twitch? Because you also stream with us.
I do stream. My Twitch is Jackie the Bananas, separated by underscores. And you can come watch me play games like 2 Point Hospital, Phasmophobia, Horizon Zero Dawn, and a few others. So come hang out.
Oh, I love that for you.
Yes.
And yeah, if you're on the YouTube channel, go ahead and leave us a comment and like and subscribe. You know, we always love to see those. And if you're on any podcast platform, obviously, leave us a rating. Give us that lovely 5 stars. We need the publicity. 0 stars, no.
0,
Just
absolute
kidding.
0.
Kidding.
And if you like our podcast, why don't you go ahead and share it with your friends and family? I'm sure they would love it too. Well, maybe. Depends.
Yeah,
You're a bunch of gays just screaming at each other.
Yeah, it depends on the episode. It depends on the day. Anyway, thanks everybody for listening to this episode. I am Matt Klubeck.
And I'm preparing my forces to kill Jackie, who's become a cannibal of them all.
And I'm a future cannibalistic dictator.
Journey.
Wow.
Oh my god. Goodbye, everybody.
Goodbye.
Bye.